Arriving an hour early with his mom for cleaning, the janitor's little son hid under the grand piano to avoid the rich man. But as soon as his fiancée played a tune, "Edgar, get ready, you're coming with me today," Catherine called to her 9-year-old son. "It'll be for the whole day. I won't leave you home alone." "All right, Mom. We're going to the house with the piano, right?" Edgar asked her. "If so, I'll bring my sheet music and practice." Catherine just absent-mindedly nodded. She still couldn't get used to working for a cleaning company, especially since she had recently held a good position at a large manufacturing firm in Virginia. Last year had been a huge trial for her. First, her marriage to Christopher fell apart. His wild lifestyle turned out to be more important than his wife and son. Then, she lost her job, the one that supported them. Of course, she didn't give up, even when she learned that her dismissal was the result of a smear campaign. She was falsely accused of something she had never done. Some colleagues had decided to shift the blame onto someone who would likely not be able to defend herself adequately. The real culprits got off scot-free, while Catherine was fired with a note in her employment record that made it almost impossible to find another job. Luckily, her neighbor Patricia suggested that she could become a house cleaner for a cleaning company. Patricia's daughter, the cheerful and energetic Elizabeth, had been working at a cleaning company for a long time and was earning quite well, and Catherine had no other choice. She was hired on a probationary basis, which had already been completed, and Catherine had gained her own regular clients who appreciated her diligence. Some of them didn't mind if she brought her son along. Of course, Edgar, at 9 years old, was already quite independent. He went to a general music school and practiced on a synthesizer at home. There were no major achievements yet, but he had already started composing music. Catherine was proud of him. And still, she was a little apprehensive about leaving him home alone for the whole day, so today, he was coming with her to clean a big, wealthy house in the suburbs. Catherine was driving her old car and thanking her lucky stars that her ex-husband hadn't taken it during the divorce. Right now, having her own transport was a huge help. Edgar's chatter made the time in the car pass quickly. "Mom, can you imagine? We have a blind music teacher," Edgar enthusiastically told her. "She wears these special really dark glasses and walks with a cane. Her name is Virginia Davidson." "Wow," Catherine said in surprise. "What does she teach?" "Solfeggio, but only for a couple of classes. We're lucky. She plays like a genius. I've never heard anything like it live. She improvises so easily," Edgar continued, still in awe of this Virginia Davidson, whom Catherine had never heard of. "Well, you see, if you practice a lot, you can even play blindfolded," Catherine smiled, "and you keep running off to play soccer with Patricia's grandson." "Well, Mom, I'm not planning on becoming a genius pianist. But for a composer, my efforts will be enough," Edgar grinned, "so don't worry." "Sure, Mozart probably said the same thing to his mom," Catherine laughed, "but still, you're doing great." "Mom, can I play a bit on the piano there?" "A synthesizer just isn't the same. I need a real instrument," Edgar asked, not wanting to cause any problems for his mom. "Yeah, probably. We'll see when we get there. Just be very careful, all right, Edgar?" Catherine asked. "We can't afford to pay for that instrument in our lifetime." They had already arrived in the neighborhood where the big rich house stood and were now walking on foot. Catherine had once dreamed of living in such a house, but then she married Christopher and all her dreams went up in smoke. Her husband was incapable of staying focused on one thing for long, and he was incredibly lazy and deceitful. His natural charm didn't make up for it. The security guard at the entrance gave her the key, and now Catherine was unlocking the door. She liked to imagine how the people who hired cleaning services lived. This house resembled a butler in a tuxedo, buttoned up to the collar. Its owner, William Davis, on the other hand, was more like a well-fed bear. He was a large man, a former athlete, with a stern look and a lordly manner. After setting up her cleaning supplies and filling the vacuum cleaner with water, Catherine got to work. Edgar settled in the living room, where the piano stood. He placed his sheet music on the stand and began practicing. As the sounds of a popular children's piece filled the air, Catherine cleaned the entire first floor and was about to move to the second floor when a car pulled up outside. Edgar immediately grabbed his sheet music and stepped behind a heavy velvet curtain. It was better not to be seen by this client's guest, unlike the others. William Davis didn't welcome outsiders into his house, and he was a man of moods. He could shout or show politeness. "Catherine, are you here?" he called from the doorway. "We'll be here for 5 minutes, then we're leaving again. You can keep cleaning." "All right, Mr. Davis," Catherine replied. "When should I come next time?" "In about a week, that'll work," he answered. "Otherwise, we'll be buried in dirt. I really like your work, by the way. I told them not to send anyone else." "Thank you," Catherine smiled. "That's very nice to hear." "Well, you clean well," William laughed in reply. "No need to point out the flaws. You get what you deserve for your work." He went deeper into the house. Edgar, still behind the curtain, tried to stay perfectly still. Catherine was polishing the stair rail to the second floor. The client had arrived with a tall woman and dark hair. The woman walked over to the piano in the living room and lightly ran her fingers over the keys. A familiar melody started playing. Edgar even peeked out a little from behind the curtain and was caught off guard. The woman at the piano looked up at him. He put his finger to his lips and whispered, "Don't give me away, or Mom might get in trouble." "Okay," she whispered back. And then Edgar finally recognized the woman. She turned away and walked deeper into the house after the host. It was the same blind teacher he had been raving about on the way here. But now, there were no dark glasses or cane. The woman was looking at the world with cold blue eyes. Soon, William and his guests left, and Edgar lost all interest in playing the piano. Instead, Edgar started wondering why Virginia Davidson was acting so strangely. She clearly seemed confident and was dressed very elegantly. Her lips were painted bright red, and in general, there were more questions than answers. Edgar spent some time feeling bored and lonely, then went to his mom. But Catherine didn't know either why the music teacher would need such secrecy. "Listen, maybe you're mistaken? People can look very similar." "No, Mom, it's definitely Virginia Davidson," Edgar replied very seriously. "Please believe me." "I don't doubt you, son. It's just strange. Why would your teacher act like that? Pretending to be blind in front of everyone and then walking around without any disguise. She's not a spy, just an ordinary woman." "I don't know." "Well, who knows how people entertain themselves? I'm not getting paid to solve mysteries, so come on, help me pack up the cleaning supplies and carry them to the car, okay? We'll put all the theories and hypotheses aside for later." They finished the cleaning, loaded the supplies into the car, and drove to their next job. It was to an elderly lady who had requested cleaning from her son, who lived abroad. She missed her grandchildren and had asked Catherine to bring her son along to chat. They spent the whole afternoon at the second job, but Catherine couldn't afford to work any less. There was no hope left for her ex-husband, Christopher. At least the apartment she got after leaving the orphanage was only in her name. That loafer and drunk couldn't lay claim to it, though he probably would have spent it already if he could. Catherine had once been utterly charmed by Christopher. They met by chance when he walked her home one evening from the bus stop. The long-haired handsome man with a guitar strap slung over his shoulder looked like a prince from a fairy tale. "Where are you going?" he asked. "You shouldn't be walking alone in the evening." "Do you know what kind of area this is?" "What can I do?" "I just got an apartment here," Catherine replied, "and school finishes late." "Well, then let your father or brother meet you," suggested the stranger. "By the way, my name's Christopher." "Catherine," she smiled, "but I don't have anyone. I'm from an orphanage. My parents died in a flood when we lived somewhere else. We lost our house, everything." "I see," Christopher said, "then I'll take care of you. Don't go home alone to call me, I'll meet you." Catherine fell in love almost instantly. Christopher became her first and only man. When she got pregnant, they got married. At that time, Catherine didn't realize that these nightly gestures were the only thing her husband was good at. He worked evenings at a restaurant, playing and singing. Catherine had always thought that Edgar inherited all his musical talents from his father. But then things got worse with his job, the restaurant closed down, and no other places would hire Christopher. He started drowning his creative crisis in alcohol. Catherine put up with it for a while, but eventually she divorced him. Of course, Christopher had no intention of paying child support. Catherine had filed a missing person report for him, and for a while she harassed the bailiffs, but her lawyer just said, "Well, what can we do, Mrs. Eddington? He's not working anywhere, and all he's doing is racking up debt." "Well, do something." Catherine protested. "Find him, make him work." "You're on your own, but I've got 3,000 cases like yours on my desk," the woman sighed, "and none of them are getting child support. Do you realize the scale of the problem?" "Yeah," Catherine sighed. "So what do I do?" "Wait, then take his rights away. If he's not paying child support, it means he's refusing his parental responsibilities. Believe me, your son will thank you later when this crocodile can't even file for child support in his old age." "I'll think about it," Catherine replied. But to herself, she decided that was exactly what she would do. She was planning to take care of it during her son's summer break. Today, she was just driving home exhausted. Edgar was tired of talking and had quieted down in the back seat. They parked in the courtyard, climbed the stairs to their apartment, and that's when Catherine realized the door was ajar. She pushed her son aside and went inside. She realized that it wasn't burglars who had been in, as the key was still in the lock. It was the same key Christopher had kept after their divorce. Feeling her heart pounding in her chest, Catherine walked into the apartment. Christopher was gone, but her jewelry box, which had been sitting on the vanity, was open. This was where Catherine had been saving money for Edgar's summer camp, the one he dreamed of attending, and for his school uniform for the new school year, but now the jewelry box was empty, everything had disappeared. Completely devastated, Catherine sank to the floor and sobbed out loud from hurt and helplessness. It was clear, calling the police was useless. Her ex-husband had probably already spent the money with his equally spineless friends. Edgar tried to comfort his mom, but it was no use. He then rushed out to the landing and almost immediately bumped into someone's work overalls. "What's going on here?" asked the young man, who was coming down from one of the upper floors. "Don't worry, I'm the plumber. I take care of your place. My name's Raymond." "Mom's crying," Edgar pointed to the door. "She won't stop." "Well, let's go take a look," Raymond said firmly. "Maybe I can help your mom." They went into the apartment, where Catherine was still crying. Raymond quickly assessed the situation, knocked on Patricia's door, and asked for some sedatives. She came right over and, after quickly assessing the situation, gave Catherine something to calm her down. Half an hour later, Catherine had washed her face and was able to speak coherently. During that time, Patricia had explained the situation to Raymond and had gone back to her apartment. The man stayed behind, though it was already late in the evening. "I'm sorry," Catherine said to him, returning to the room. "I don't even know why I reacted so strongly. I'm upset about the money, and I'm the one to blame, really." "Blame for what?" Raymond asked, surprised. "For your husband being a scoundrel?" "Well, not changing the locks. I guess they just forgot." "Don't worry. Tomorrow I'll buy a new one and install it myself." "No need," Catherine waved him off. "We have very little money right now, and I won't be able to pay." "I'm not asking," Raymond replied. "Consider it a friendly gesture of support. Don't worry, the lock is relatively cheap." "All right," Catherine nodded. "Honestly, I just don't have the energy anymore. He did this on purpose. He knows that we're barely getting by, and still, he had no shame in stealing money for the child." "Why don't you report it to the police?" he asked. "Although, I understand, the kid will have to live with that label. And besides, he had a key, so I'd end up looking guilty too," Catherine sighed. "If you come tomorrow, please call me first. because Edgar will probably be home alone. All right, I'll call, Raymond promised. They exchanged phone numbers. The man left, and Catherine began preparing a simple dinner. Fortunately, her ex-husband had at least left some food, otherwise, he would have probably stolen even the last sausage to share with his drinking buddies. The next morning, Catherine sent her son to music school and went to her former mother-in-law's house. She lived in the same neighborhood, and her son stayed at her apartment, but no one answered the door there. The friends of Christopher, sitting on the playground, said they hadn't seen him in a couple of days. Catherine spent the whole morning searching and was even angrier now. She was already late for her next cleaning job, and she couldn't afford to lose work. Catherine quickly returned to the house, jumped into the car, and drove off. On the way, she promised herself that she would earn a lot of money and make up for all her losses. That morning, Edgar wasn't bored either. He went to his lessons, looking forward to meeting his solfeggio teacher. He even thought about finding a moment to ask Virginia some questions. But everything went wrong. The lesson was canceled. Edgar went up to one of the teachers and asked where Virginia Davidson was. "Why do you need her?" The teacher asked curiously. "The director said we're looking for a new solfeggio teacher. The old one quit." "But how could that be?" Edgar asked in surprise. "Maybe it's a mistake?" "No, I'll tell you more. Our blind one is apparently moving to another city." The teacher seized the opportunity to gossip. "But of course, she's a high flyer, not for some backwater music club." "How can I find her now?" Edgar asked. "This is very important. Virginia Davidson gave me some rare sheet music and asked me to return it." "Wow." The teacher replied, puzzled. "If she hasn't left yet, I can help. I once gave her a lift home. She lives 3 blocks from here, red building, first entrance, ground floor, and it's apartment number 1, you won't miss it. But I'm afraid you're too late, Virginia Davidson has probably already left." "Well, I'll still try," Edgar said, "thanks so much." "Say hi from me to her," the teacher asked, from her old colleagues. Edgar knew where the street was, and his mom thought he was still in class, so she wouldn't worry yet. The boy grabbed his tube of sheet music and headed for Virginia's place. He found the house without difficulty. It was in the old part of town, where not all buildings had intercoms. This one didn't have one, but when Edgar rang the doorbell persistently, no one answered. However, loud barking came from a neighboring apartment, so Edgar rang that door. "What do you want?" A plump woman in a robe appeared, holding a happy Airedale Terrier by the collar. "Why all the noise?" "I'm looking for Virginia Davidson," Edgar said. "Do you know where she is?" "The music club said she quit and left." "No, she should be here," the neighbor replied. Virginia wasn't planning on leaving, but she didn't come back home yesterday. When she left, she joked that she was going to play the spy in enemy territory. She got into this really expensive car, but didn't come back. "I see," Edgar said, feeling anxious for the unfamiliar Virginia. He quickly headed home. His mom had already written that Raymond would be coming to replace the lock. Edgar let the locksmith in, and he quickly changed the old lock cylinder and handed Edgar the new keys. But the boy didn't want to let him go just yet. He watched Raymond handle the lock with skill and asked, "Can you open any door?" "Well, yeah, why?" Raymond smiled. "Planning a bank robbery?" "No," Edgar answered seriously, "I think my music teacher is in trouble. She pretended to be blind for some reason, wore dark glasses, and then I saw her without them in a wealthy house. A very unpleasant person lives there. I'm afraid he might have done something to Virginia." "And you're planning to save her? Does your mom know about this heroism?" Raymond asked sternly, but when he saw the boy crying, he softened. "Hey, what's wrong? Want me to help? Let's go check it out together. I have a car, it's a simple one, my dad gave it to me, but it works. Do you know where we need to go?" "Yes," Edgar nodded. "Please, let's do it." While Catherine was moving from one house to another, doing cleaning, her son and his new acquaintance were already driving to the village where the wealthy house stood. Luckily for Edgar, the owner, William, was away that day, and he wouldn't be coming home anytime soon. They drove down a rural road, and from this side, the village wasn't guarded. There was no checkpoint, so they managed to sneak onto the property. Fortunately, there were no dogs either. Edgar ran around the house, trying to figure out how to get inside, while Raymond peered through the windows, trying not to draw attention. In one of the rooms, Raymond noticed a woman sitting on the floor and gently tapped on the window. "Help!" Virginia jumped up from the floor. "Call the police, or better yet, break the window. The owner of the house locked me in here yesterday and left." Then she noticed Edgar and waved at him, and the boy unexpectedly pulled out a spare key to the front door from under the porch. They freed Virginia and quickly left the house, making sure to wipe their fingerprints. Once in the car, the woman, a little calmer, said, "Thank you so much. Little Edgar, I think. How did you figure out where to find me?" "I was at your house," the boy replied. "And the neighbor said you hadn't come home." "I see, and you decided to raise the alarm?" Virginia smiled. "But I can't go home, William knows the address." "We can go to our place," Edgar suggested. "My mom doesn't believe you even exist." "All right," she nodded. "Looks like I don't have much choice." They arrived at Catherine's apartment. She was already waiting on the landing, unsuccessfully trying to reach either her son or Raymond. After feeding everyone lunch, she invited Virginia to talk. By that time, Raymond had left for work. "So, tell me, why were you at my house?" Catherine asked. "And what's this awful story about kidnapping and blindness?" "I'll tell you," Virginia replied. "So, the owner of that house, William Davis, as he's known at the music school, a patron and a good man, but I hate that bastard. 5 years ago, he met my sister, a talented pianist. Clara was a genius. They predicted she'd have a big career. She had just turned 17, and there was a big age gap between us, 13 years. It's no joke. I raised her after our mother died. So, this patron seduced the naive girl, and when she got pregnant, he abandoned her." "Was this in our town?" Catherine asked. "I don't remember such a story." "No, it was in the capital. After the scandal, he moved away," Virginia explained. "Anyway, my sister was left pregnant at 17. Her beloved told her that the child could be anyone's, and it turned out to be twins. Clara tried to tell him she was going crazy, and then she died during childbirth. They couldn't save her. There was very heavy bleeding, Rh incompatibility. The children were saved, but that didn't make it any easier." "Why not?" Catherine asked. "You could have raised your nieces." According to child services, I wasn't fit for that role." Virginia burst into tears. "I was to blame. I had a nervous breakdown and ended up in a psychiatric hospital. I was there for 6 months, and during that time, the girls were transferred to an orphanage. I didn't have a husband or a steady income, and I also had a certificate of mental instability. So, all these years, I just visited them at the orphanage. And all of this is also William's fault, if it weren't for him." "Well, okay, but why were you pretending to be blind?" Catherine asked her guest. "I don't understand the point of this performance." "I want to get back at him," Virginia replied. "You see, the bastard got away. For a couple of years, I couldn't even find the scoundrel. Then it turned out that he was living in this town and supporting the local art school. I'm a trained music teacher, so I easily got a job here and made his acquaintance. Of course, I had to sell my apartment, so now I have no chance of getting the kids back, but at least I have the opportunity to take revenge." "Got it. You changed your appearance, and the dark glasses hid the unusual light in your eyes. So how did he figure you out?" "It was a stupid mistake. I just started playing the melody my sister composed," Virginia said. "William Davis knew it, and then he figured everything out about me. After the restaurant, we went to his place, and that bastard locked me in a room, saying he'd think about how to punish me later. He had to leave. "Oh my God, how awful," Catherine said. "My son, along with an adult friend, broke into someone else's house. If this comes out, I'll lose my job." "Well, I hope no one saw us," Virginia replied. "By the way, isn't that handsome guy who was with the boy your husband? They get along so well." "No, we've only known Raymond for a day," Catherine sighed. "I didn't think he was such an adventurer." "Oh, come on, at least they saved me," Virginia answered. "Otherwise, who knows how it would have ended. The only problem now is I can't go back home, even though it's just a rented apartment, but there are my things, my money." "Give me the keys, I'll go and get everything," Catherine offered. "But don't open the door to anyone. Will you stay with Edgar? The main thing is that no one sees you." Under the cover of night, she went to Virginia's apartment and took everything she needed. At home, the women discussed the situation once again and decided that the teacher would stay with them for now. She even agreed to hide in a dark room, a spacious pantry where they set up a cot. A week passed. William had already stirred up the whole music school. Of course, one of the teachers remembered that one of her students had been asking about her persistently. Taking the student's address, the businessman went to investigate. He didn't like what was going on. The vengeful sister of his former mistress had disappeared without a trace, and the boy had the same last name as his housekeeper. At the same time, Christopher was trying to break into Catherine's apartment, as she had a day off. Edgar was practicing a new piece on the synthesizer with Virginia. He was wearing headphones and didn't hear the outside noise. Meanwhile, Catherine's ex-husband had gotten very angry. She flung open the door and shouted, "Get out, or I'll call the police. Damn thief. You robbed your own child. Oh, Catherine, give me some money, will you?" Christopher grinned foolishly. "Why's there a new lock on your door?" "What for?" "I'll just kick this door down. Leave quietly, or I really will call the police." Catherine asked. "What's the big deal?" "I came to see my son." "Edgar, come greet your dad," Christopher yelled, shoving Catherine aside and walking into the room. "Who's this girl?" "A friend of my ex's?" Christopher asked. "Catherine, who's this girl you brought?" "She's cute, introduce us, huh?" "Christopher, leave." Catherine pulled him by the arm. "Don't scare the child. Give me some money for a hangover, I spent all of the last bit. My mom won't give me more, but I really need it." Just then, Raymond appeared. He had been over almost daily by now. He didn't hide his intentions, he was courting Catherine. Now he was carrying a bucket of potatoes, which he bought from an old lady near the bus stop, and at the same time, he kicked Christopher out, literally pushing him down the stairs. Christopher kept yelling and threatening, but his confidence was gone. The fact that Catherine had a protector left him disoriented, and on top of that, he had bumped into the wall hard, and now blood was dripping from his nose. Pressing a large burdock leaf to his nostril, the man stumbled across the yard. Meanwhile, William was rushing toward him. He showed the drunkard a photo of a woman on his phone. "Have you seen her?" "Yeah, just now, in apartment 9. "She's my ex's friend," Christopher answered. "By the way, she's cute. Man, give me some money, will you?" "Here, take this, but first, get yourself together," William advised. "Or you won't make it past the first patrol." "Oh, come on, are you smart or something?" Christopher laughed. "I'm the boss around here." William went back to his car, continuing to observe. Inside Catherine's apartment, there was a lot of commotion. Catherine was telling Virginia, "I'm uneasy, my ex will definitely spill everything." "What did he even see?" "You, in person." "God, why did my son get involved in this?" Catherine grabbed her head. "You need to be hidden again, but where?" "I have a key to an apartment 2 floors up," Raymond suddenly said. "I'm doing some repairs there, they're planning to move someone in. Sometimes I even sleep there." There's a cot, a kettle, they've already installed the bathtub and toilet. It's livable if we keep it quiet. Go there right now, Catherine urged. I have a feeling time is running out. Come on, what could happen? Virginia smiled. But she packed her things and followed Raymond. After about an hour, William grew tired of waiting outside and went upstairs to Catherine's apartment. When she opened the door, her heart skipped a beat. Catherine, what a coincidence. William laughed. Is this Edgar? A smart boy, playing the piano. Yes, my son is into music, Catherine confirmed. You're going to let me in, right? The unexpected guest asked, grinning. So, Edgar, did you give her the sheet music, the one she was looking for? She wasn't home, the boy replied, trembling from fear. I left it in the mailbox. And you've never been to my place? William continued, walking through the apartment and peeking into all the rooms. And you've never saved anyone there? Are you accusing my child of something? Catherine exclaimed. He's only 9. Oh, of course, and it couldn't have been just you, William smirked. A kid couldn't have done all this on his own. By the way, Catherine, did you make a duplicate of the key? Aren't you afraid I'll accuse you of theft? Are you out of your mind? Catherine replied. Well, we'll see, William grinned. Just tell me where Virginia is, and you can keep your job. This woman is crazy, she was in a mental hospital. Don't you understand, she's dangerous not just for everyone, but for your child too. Get out now, I have nothing more to say to you, Catherine said stubbornly. Or back up your accusations with facts, which of course you don't have. William left empty-handed, and the next morning, Catherine received a message from the cleaning company. They informed her that they no longer needed her services. Meanwhile, her money was running low, and thanks to her ex-husband's actions, she no longer had any savings. At least summer had just begun, Edgar was on vacation, and the bucket of potatoes Raymond had brought was useful. When Virginia found out, she got angry. She handed Catherine some money. Here, put it into the common pot, at least for food. The rest, I'll still need for my revenge. You lost your job because of that monster. Yeah, and my ex took everything from the house. Fine, I'll start working on getting his parental rights revoked. You and Raymond, stay here in the backup apartment. Raymond is still doing repairs, and I won't leave my son unattended anymore, Catherine said. That would-be relative of yours could easily kidnap a child. That's true, he's completely insane, Virginia confirmed. A real psycho, I even recorded all the threats he shouted when he locked me in the house. For the next few days, Catherine focused on sorting out the necessary paperwork and handed it over to the child services. They all started to think about what to do next. Unexpectedly, Edgar offered a solution. What if you tried becoming bloggers? Mom sings really well, she has a beautiful voice. And Aunt Virginia can play melodies even on plates with forks, she showed me. Can you believe that, Mom? Oh, come on, we're not bloggers, Catherine smiled. We'd need microphones, cameras, all kinds of equipment. We'll figure it out, Virginia suddenly became excited. Our niche will be singing in unusual places, like in a forest glade or somewhere else, even in an apartment under renovation. We can start filming on a phone. I know how to edit videos, and I know an IT guy who can help us get our first views. Catherine agreed. They began doing live streams and recording videos. They had enough money to last about a month, but Edgar believed in them so much. And suddenly, the duo of the multi-instrumentalist and the cleaning lady became popular with the public. Catherine didn't aim for complex pieces, she chose folk songs. She had been in the choir at the orphanage. It seemed that William had left them alone. He was satisfied with what had happened to Catherine, and Virginia kept a low profile. She was already dreaming of becoming famous and taking her nieces with her. They even went to visit the girls together. Catherine looked at the little ones and felt a sharp sympathy for them. The girls reached out to both women and to Edgar. About 2 months later, Virginia and Catherine discovered that their videos were becoming popular. They started receiving generous donations from followers, were invited to appear on television, had advertisers, and even got a personal manager. The women worked hard to establish themselves in their niche and not lose the popularity they had gained. During this time, Edgar helped raise Raymond, who had moved Catherine and her son into his 2-room apartment. Virginia moved into Catherine's 1-room apartment, where they filmed their videos. The case with the revocation of her ex-husband's parental rights also made progress. He didn't show up for any of the hearings, and the decision was made in Catherine's favor. "Well, now should we get married?" Raymond asked her. "Catherine, we're already living together, and I want to adopt Edgar." "Yes, but let's wait a little longer," Catherine asked. "Right now, we're always on the go. We need to ride this wave of popularity. Of course, we're not making much money, but definitely more than I did in cleaning." "Well, that's not forever," Raymond replied. "You need to think about the future. For example, you could start your own cleaning company and not depend on partners or greedy employers." "I'll think about it," Catherine smiled. "You know, I want to try many things. I never thought I'd end up singing, but now I'm doing it almost professionally. I only regret not getting into a music school." "Well, that can always be fixed," Raymond smiled. "We'll support you, Edgar and I. But Virginia is not exactly the most reliable partner, and are you sure that Psycho has calmed down?" "I don't know, Raymond," Catherine answered honestly. "But you can be afraid and do nothing, or you can take the risk and move forward." This wasn't the first time they'd had this conversation. Raymond genuinely worried for his beloved, as she was performing in places completely unprepared for it. In their latest performance, they were set to sing with some orchestra at a construction site. The spotlights were flickering, and it was getting dark outside quickly. Catherine stepped forward to sing, took a couple of steps back, and stumbled. She fell down an entire floor and crashed onto the concrete below. Of course, people rushed to her aid and called an ambulance. The doctors did everything they could, but the diagnosis was unclear: a serious spinal injury. Surgery was needed, and extremely expensive rehabilitation, with very minimal chances of recovery even after surgery. This was when it became clear how short-lived fame could be. Fans online discussed the incident for about a week before switching their attention to more interesting personalities. Donations stopped coming, even after Virginia announced an urgent fundraiser. Those willing to pay for music didn't want to be involved in someone else's misfortune. Then, someone organized a smear campaign against them. Rumors spread all over the internet about the duo's earnings and how all their stories about Catherine's injury were just part of a publicity stunt. Instead of an outpouring of love, Catherine was overwhelmed with a wave of hatred. It even got to the point where some fans stormed her hospital room to see the injuries for themselves. "Who are you? What are you doing here?" a terrified Catherine whispered. "Get up, you faker," shouted an angry woman. "I'm the president of your fan club, and I want to personally expose your lies." "I can't get up, I'm paralyzed from the neck down," Catherine whispered, unable to even move. "You're lying," the fat woman screamed. "We got x-ray photos." "Film it all, I'm going to lift her up." Fortunately, at that moment, a doctor arrived with hospital security. A miracle saved Catherine from further injury. The relentless fans, now turned haters, were escorted out. They continued to write their hateful messages online, and soon, the instigator of the harassment appeared from the shadows. Someone rang the doorbell at the apartment where Virginia lived. She opened the door, expecting it to be Raymond or Edgar, but instead, she faced William. His gaze was full of hatred. The man clearly enjoyed his position and was literally basking in his power. "Well, so the Avenger finally gets it, huh?" he smirked. "Now you understand that it's better to be friends with me? And your friend didn't have such good luck, huh? What a shame, you set her up in every way. First, you took away her job, and now her health. I guess your little son will be off to the orphanage just like your poor nieces. What do you want?" Virginia snapped. Came to gloat? Fine, I don't care anymore. No, I made them an offer, William smirked. You want to compensate Catherine for what happened? My money won't be enough for the surgery. I bought the apartment for my nieces, Virginia snapped. And she won't take it. What if I pay for the surgery? William smirked. Of course, with a condition. You'll move into my house and never perform again. You'll become my personal songbird in a cage, in a big room with a piano and padded walls. How does that sound, Virginia? I agree, she answered without hesitation. I'm ready to live in your house and follow all your conditions. Anything, just make sure Catherine gets better. She definitely isn't at fault. And as for me, I can't be saved anyway. Excellent, pack up, we're going. First, we'll stop by the hospital and I'll pay for the treatment right in front of you. Then we'll go to my house, where you'll meet your final sunset one day. By the way, don't you want to say goodbye to your nieces? No, you'll never find out where they are, Virginia replied calmly. You can stop trying. Those girls will never be your victims. Well, it was worth a try, William smirked. In any case, I'm much more interested in you. Virginia silently packed her things and thought about how now she could carry out her plan. She hated William so much that she even trembled with fury in his presence. But now, the object of her feelings would always be within her sight. Virginia was sure she would get what she wanted. They arrived at the hospital, and while William took care of paying for the surgery and rehabilitation, Virginia went to Catherine's room. Well, that's it, I'm going to his house. Wish me luck that my revenge plan works out perfectly. No, please. Why? Stop. Catherine begged. No, the price of my captivity is your surgery, Virginia said with a sad smile. It's time to settle the debts, Catherine, and I owe you a lot. What about the girls? Catherine asked. What will happen to them? Adopt them. If I can't take my revenge, at least do that, Virginia asked. They'll never give them back to me. It's impossible. She hugged her friend and left the room. The next day, Catherine underwent surgery. The surgeon was from out of town, a professor from the capital. William had arranged this in advance, certain that Virginia would agree. When Catherine woke up, she felt excruciating pain throughout her body. She was scared at first, then relieved. Before, she had lost all sensation. Now, the doctor was optimistic and said her recovery had begun. Soon, Raymond and Edgar arrived in her room. The boy rushed to his mother, and she was able to squeeze his hand. Edgar cried, then began talking. Mom, don't worry, Uncle Raymond got me ready for school, and his mom even gave me a backpack. She's really nice. Everything's great at school, no F's so far, but I quit music class. I don't want to go there anymore. Do you know anything about Virginia? Does she even know you had surgery? Of course, son, it was Virginia who found the money, Catherine answered. Just make sure you listen to Uncle Raymond and study well. We'll figure everything else out. And could you please get me some carrot juice with a straw? Okay, Edgar said and ran off to fulfill the request. How are you feeling? Do you feel anything? Raymond asked with concern. Don't worry about Edgar, my mom came to help. He already calls her grandma. He doesn't go anywhere alone, just like we agreed. Thank you, my dear, Catherine smiled. I couldn't have done it without you. Oh, don't mention it. Raymond laughed. So, are you going to marry me now? Consider this an official proposal. Yes, I agree, Catherine smiled. What can I do, Raymond? Just let me fully recover first, okay? I don't want to be a burden for the rest of my life if the rehabilitation doesn't help. All right, stop with those thoughts, Raymond said. Everything will be fine. And what about Virginia? Wasn't Edgar sent to talk to her? Yes, we need to talk. She's back in that house, in voluntary captivity. She did it for me, never gave up on her plan. Now it's clear where the money came from, Raymond said, darkening. But I don't care about that, at least you'll recover now. As for Virginia, well, that's her choice. Honestly, I think she's a little crazy. Despite all her good deeds, that woman is dangerous. Don't judge her, Catherine asked. I feel guilty toward her. The poor girl went mad after her sister died. They talked for a long time. Soon, Catherine met Raymond's mother, who accepted her as if she were her own daughter. She was a kind, wonderful woman, simple, from the countryside, and thrilled for her son who had found his love. Virginia, now in William's house, felt quite comfortable. Of course, he, being a real lunatic, had established his own rules. She was given only one room, and, in fact, Virginia was a true prisoner. At night and on days when William was absent, they locked her up. However, the man was slowly but surely losing his mind. He increasingly made Virginia sit at the piano in the evenings and forced her to play his late sister's favorite pieces. He also insisted she dye her hair back to its natural light color so she would be almost indistinguishable from Clara in the dim light. More and more often, William would call her by the name of his deceased sister. Drunk on music, he would usually scream at Virginia. "What are you doing to me? You keep haunting me in my dreams, crying all the time. You brought this on yourself. You chose this solution to the problem. We could have been happy." "Oh, really? You've never loved anyone except yourself," she would retort boldly, dodging the objects he threw at her. Sometimes, William would be more coherent, and then his cruelty took a more sophisticated form. On those days, Virginia just wanted to lie down with her face to the wall and hear nothing. "Where are our little charming nieces?" William would start. "Maybe one of the noble patrons has already adopted them, and soon the girls will finally come to their real daddy?" "No, you'll never find them," Virginia screamed. "I know for sure." "Oh, really? You know money works wonders too, right?" William laughed. "Come on, play your music, go crazy, and then you can teach it to the girls. They'll continue the dynasty of mad, brilliant pianists." "You're definitely insane," Virginia replied. "And a liar too. I don't believe a word you say. You're no longer all-powerful, you're on the brink of bankruptcy. I saw the papers from the bank in your office. What do you say? Did the attack on us in the media and online cost you a lot?" "Well, of course. But it brought so much pleasure." William smirked. "And here you are, sitting like a bird in a cage." Months passed. Catherine hadn't received a single word from Virginia, but her recovery was already a done deal. Catherine was even able to stand and walk, although she still relied on a cane. The organizers of the failed performance, where she had been injured, had eventually paid her compensation. The money came in very handy, but Catherine couldn't stop thinking about Virginia. After being discharged from the hospital, she flew with her son to the seaside to undergo rehabilitation in a sanatorium and just to relax. The past months had also been tough on the child. It seemed like Edgar had aged a lifetime. While walking along the shore with his mother, he suddenly asked, "Do you think Virginia is okay? We haven't heard from her in so long." "I don't know, darling," Catherine replied. "I hope she's fine." "It's all because of her," Edgar suddenly kicked a stone angrily. "I'm guilty too. What's the big deal? Just some talented musician with her mysteries. We could have just stayed out of it. Mom, you almost died. I was so scared it would all end badly." "Don't blame yourself, son," Catherine said gently. "But really, you and Raymond should stay out of other people's homes from now on. This time, you narrowly escaped punishment." Their seaside vacation ended after a month. When they got back home, Catherine spent a lot of time doing physical exercises and continuing her rehabilitation. One evening, while resting in front of the TV, she saw a news story. It was about the very village where William lived, and a report about a deadly accident. A woman without identification had been run over by a garbage truck. Her photo appeared on the screen, with a request for anyone who knew the deceased to contact the police. Catherine reached for the phone. The image was of poor quality, but she recognized Virginia without a doubt. At the police station, they told her that the woman had jumped out from nowhere, from some bushes, right into the path of the truck. That's why they hadn't seen her in time. Catherine told them that Virginia might have been staying at William's house, without going into details. The philanthropist entrepreneur was questioned, but he was completely out of his mind. Catherine called him herself late in the evening after she had put Edgar to bed. No one else could answer her questions. "Hello," Catherine said, turning on the recording on her phone. "I want to know what happened to Virginia." "Haha, is that you?" he laughed. "A friend with similar interests." "Well, I can't satisfy your curiosity. That girl was very clever. I was away for 3 days, and there are plenty of witnesses. You can't accuse me." "Then why is she dead now?" Catherine asked. "Come on, you must want to tell someone everything." "I don't even know." William screeched into the phone. "She was locked in her room with padded walls. You can't open the door from the inside. Apparently, the girl found some more saviors. Someone let her out, but if she had stayed put, she'd still be alive." "So you're sure she escaped with outside help?" Catherine asked. "But why did she run into the road?" "How should I know?" William snapped. "You can't ask her now. And anyway, forget everything. I'll pay for the funeral and that's all." "Was it you who called the police?" "Good job not ratting me out." "Well, unfortunately, it's impossible to prove that she was a prisoner and not just a guest," Catherine smirked. "Exactly," William confirmed. "I was just helping the poor girl out of mercy." "Don't you want to repent?" Catherine smirked. "For all the accumulated sins? Are you going to forgive me?" he yelled into the phone. "Go ahead, be happy that she left alive." Catherine ended the call and realized that she wouldn't let this matter go, but first, she needed to ensure her son's safety. Catherine insisted that she and Raymond get married as soon as possible, and the man was overjoyed. Soon, the summer holidays began again. It was decided that Edgar would spend time with Raymond's mother in the village. Virginia was buried, and William did indeed pay for everything. He was eager to prove, at least to himself, that he wasn't responsible for her death. But the relief he hoped for never came. Catherine consulted with lawyers and realized that an unofficial recording was clearly insufficient to prove the tormentor's guilt. Her conversation with William didn't confirm anything. So, she decided on a more sophisticated form of revenge. With Raymond's help, Catherine installed hidden speakers on the businessman's property that worked remotely. The recording could be played from anywhere. During her brief blogging career, Catherine had learned how to edit sound and video, and now those skills came in handy. Raymond initially tried to talk her out of revenge, but eventually he accepted it and began to help. Over the course of a month, whenever William was left alone, he heard music. The speakers weren't audible to the other neighbors, but he had to endure the incessant sounds of piano music, specifically the very piece that Clara loved and Virginia often played. After a month, the man finally snapped. He gathered himself and went to the police, on the brink of a severe mental breakdown. "Lock me up. I kidnapped and held someone," William told the police officers. "Just arrest me right now." "What's the matter?" "Why the rush?" asked the investigator, who was already preparing to close the case. "I can't take it anymore. She keeps coming to me and playing music. Maybe it'll stop in prison." William pleaded. "Arrest me right now. I'll show everything, I'll tell everything, I have video recordings with the prisoner, just don't let me go." By the time the investigators arrived, the speakers were no longer on the property, but in the house. There was evidence that Catherine had long since given up trying to prove. William Davis was arrested and later convicted of kidnapping and driving someone to suicide. After ensuring that her tormentor and Virginia's enemy could no longer harm them, Catherine began the process of adopting her late friend's nieces. She and Raymond opened their own company offering husband for an hour and cleaning services. They hired employees and handled some of the orders themselves. The compensation money from her injury was more than enough to cover it. They went to the orphanage together to pick up the girls. The girls smiled trustingly at their new mom, dad, and brother. Edgar confidently took his sisters by the hand and led them to the car. Now they had a family car with 2 child seats for the little ones. The girls happily walked alongside their older brother. Wow! Raymond smiled at his wife. Edgar has really grown up. Look at him, such a serious, real man. That's for sure. Catherine smiled back at him. And honestly, I'm so lucky to have you all. By the way, Raymond said, we should think about having another child. We just need to trade in our apartments for a bigger one so Edgar and the girls can each have their own bedrooms. We'll see, we have a lot of plans for now, Catherine smiled at him as she got into the car. The apartment exchange happened quite quickly, and within a few months, the large family moved to a better neighborhood, though not too far from Edgar's school. While packing things up in their old apartment, Catherine went outside to throw away some unnecessary junk and noticed her ex-husband rummaging through the dumpsters looking for bottles. He looked completely deranged. Catherine didn't recognize Christopher, and she didn't rush to greet him. She had long since turned that page of her life, and she had no intention of going back to it, especially since she was now happily pregnant.